most people would have known that they should be there on time. But this is sort of more of an intermediary space where people don't quite know when it will start. So we're waiting, and while we're waiting, actually, welcome. Welcome. I have these two options for footwear for tonight. I used to wear white shoes for my performances, but these white shoes are not so white anymore. So I can't wear. They're not like these white shoes. These are just normal shoes. But so I brought these alternatives with me tonight, and I can't really decide which I should wear. So, and it should also be said, I'm wearing pink socks. I'm wearing pink socks. So, how many vote for these? 1, 2, 3 votes for the brogues from Sweden. And how many vote for these? 1 vote for the slippers from Germany with tartan. Is there anyone here who's a native English speaker? No. Is there anyone here who understands English? Yes. Okay. I brought these to Scotland where, like, where they have tartan. Like, this is a proper Scottish tartan. It's a royal Stuart, and actually it's the tartan of the Queen, because the Queen is, among a lot of other things, also a Stuart, and that means that, in contrast to other tartans, which you really shouldn't wear unless you belong to that clan, this one can be worn by anyone who feel that they are a part of the United Kingdom, which none of us are, because none of us are native English speakers. Now, so the Scots, when I said this was tartan, there was like an eager debate whether this was tartan or not. But there is one. We've had a few new arrivals. There's some seats left here in the front. So, and of course, I want everyone to have their democratic, the right to exercise their democratic, whatever. So we'll take the vote again. The Swedish black brogues, hands up now. Should I wear them? And it's still 3 votes. And the German maybe tartans, it's 5 votes. You see, politics, it can change just like that. This is from, everyone in the art business, and I take it that some of you are in the art business. Everyone in the art business has been in Berlin, and this is a slipper from Berlin. It's from an old family company that's on Torstraße, which used to be a great art street in Berlin. It's no longer a great art street in Berlin. But the family firm is still there on Torstraße. And they existed before the Nazis, they existed during the Nazis, they existed since Torstraße was a part of East Berlin, they existed during the socialist regime, as you would say here in Hungary, or as you used to say here in Hungary, during the communist regime, like we would have said in the West, and they're still going strong. In German it's called a Karo, a tartan. It's definitely, so maybe it's not a tartan, but it's a Karo. And the funny thing is that they make these slippers, they don't make a left and right. It's like they make a unitary slipper, and then, as you see, they form themselves after the foot, after a while, as long as you use on the same foot. But during the socialist regime, communist, the regime, they were not happy with this system. They demanded that this family company make a left and a right slipper, which they did, but now the socialist regime is over, now it's a capitalist regime, and now they're back to making the unitary slipper. We haven't started yet, just come in and make yourself comfortable. And we're trying to figure out if we should use these slippers here or these slippers here. So hands up if we should use these slippers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hands up properly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And hands up if we should use these slippers here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's these slippers here. So we're almost ready to start now. But I will need to drink some water during the performance. And these are the same brand, but they've got different capsules. So could anyone please tell me, what does pink mean? No gas. What does blue mean?
Hungaricum.
Hungaricum?
Yeah.
Meaning in English?
Hungaricum. Also in English. Something Hungarian people are proud of.
Okay.
Hungarian product.
Yes, but does that mean gas or not gas? Are they proud of the gas?
Gas.
Gas, okay. Green? Sorry?
It means added gas. So
With added gas?
It's an additional gas.
Okay. In a mode which Hungarians are proud of.
And the green is just the normal gas.
But normal is without gas?
No, some water comes from with gas.
Ah, okay. So there is gas or carbon dioxide, which I guess is the technical term, but only the natural amount. Okay, now the question is, during a performance like this, which kind of water is best to drink? Like, on the one hand, we know that gas might make the performer burp. On the other hand, it's more refreshing. So maybe I need to drink less water if I drink water with carbon dioxide gas, which might mean that I don't have to run out to go to the toilet in the middle of the performance. So how many votes for the green natural gas? A lot of votes. How many votes for the blue added gas? 1 vote. 2. How many votes for the pink? More votes, but not as many as the green. Which makes me very happy. Like, this outcome makes me very happy because I grew up in Sweden, where we don't like to go to extremes. Oh, and is there anyone here who's good with the still camera? Documentation is essential in contemporary art. Is there anyone?
Is it possible to take pictures?
Yes, you may, yeah.
But I am not official. I mean not a professional documentator. Private.
Well, I mean, that is whatever you... I mean, Duchamp put the fountain on the pedestal, and then he said, this is a piece of art. So if you take a photograph, and you say, this is an official photograph.
And not art, not at all.
No, but like a photograph, an official photograph, then it will be an official photograph, I think. However, could someone do me the, like, is there anyone who... Thank you. I put it on -1 because of the black background, but I'm sure you... So I'm staying in this apartment here in Budapest on the Rada utca, and I don't remember which number, but it's K, it's something K, and I had this incident this morning. I woke up very early, so there were no cafes open. So I went to the Spar shop to buy coffee, and I bought coffee there. And then I went back to the apartment, but I sort of wasn't awake yet. And I especially hadn't been awake when I had left the building. So I forgot the notebook where I had written down the code to the door. So I had to stand there in front of the door without having had coffee, because it's too early, no cafes were open, and try to sort of remember what the code was. You know, that, like, how do you do that? And it's sort of, you know, it's, you know, let the force be with you. So I did, and it was the right code. Otherwise, you know, I would have been there, you know, not being able to speak Hungarian, trying to break into this building, looking tired. And it's a very fascinating apartment. It's a very big apartment in all directions, and it's got like 2 very big bedrooms, and there's a wall in between the bedrooms, and they've got like really big beds, and all the furniture is identical, and the only difference is that there's like a baby cot in one of the rooms, and I thought, I'm not going to sleep in the room with a baby cot. I mean, it will be too evident that, you know, something is missing in my life if I'm sleeping in the room with a baby cot. So I chose the other room, but that other room had noisy neighbors. They were doing something on the internet. I could hear this sort of like after midnight, and so I moved the baby cot from room A to room B, and slept there without the noisy neighbors and without the baby cot. So the best of both worlds, so to say. And this apartment with these 2 very big bedrooms, it has this, you know, modern combined living room kitchen, which, you know, since the early 90s, late 80s, has been very trendy. And there are 3 doors along a wall in the kitchen living room, 3 doors, and it sort of looks like the doors in a novel by Hermann Hesse, you know, so what's behind the door. And there are 2 bathrooms behind the doors. And when I'm saying bathroom, I mean it in the European way, you know, where you actually take a bath, or in this case a shower. And like there are a lot of seats, and you won't be disturbing anyone because we haven't started yet. So please take a seat. No one will hold it against you. And then in the middle door is actually like a toilet. So there are 2 bathrooms, 2 shower rooms, and 1 toilet. And I've been thinking of the mathematics of that. Like, surely you go more to the toilet than you take a shower. Normally, you know, most people go not only once to the toilet, but several times. And if you have to go to the toilet and someone else is in the toilet, you know, that might be a critical situation. While if you want to take a shower and someone else is taking a shower, you know, in the worst case, you can go in with that. I mean, I'm Scandinavian, you know. You can go and, you know, share the shower with that other person. But sharing a toilet is, you don't want to do that, and it would be highly impractical. So, wouldn't it have made more sense to have 2 toilets and 1 shower? This is a map of Paris from the time of the author Balzac. It's from 1834, and I've used it to navigate in Paris. Some streets have changed names, like Champs-Élysées is something else, for instance. And of course, I think Budapest is like a greater city than Paris. I think it has more character. It's more beautiful, but they don't make one of Budapest. I wish they did. In the United States, the biggest company for sanitary porcelain is called American Standard. American Standard is a somewhat enigmatic name. Does it mean American Standard? An American Standard to American customers, used to American luxury and comfort, in contrast to, let's say, Bangladesh. Or does it mean American Standard in contrast to American luxury and comfort? This is confusing. But when the American Standard started its sister company in Europe, they were wise enough not to call it European Standard. And what would a European sanitary porcelain standard be? Swiss or Slovenian, Albanian, Bulgarian or Cypriot? A film can be European, at least from an American point of view, if it's complicated and confused, experimental and real. And that can be fine for a film, but it doesn't work for sanitary porcelain. But the European American Standard has found a fabulous solution. They call themselves Ideal Standard. Ideal Standard is pure genius. It's the ideal standard to everyone, always. Maybe it's the most perfect name a company ever had. It's just a pity they're in the wrong line of business, because you can't get rich selling sanitary porcelain. You can only sell one toilet to every human in this world, and a wash basin, and maybe a bidet, and it can last a lifetime or even longer. Sanitary porcelain can be passed on to new generations, and there's a limit to what people will pay for sanitary porcelain. With sanitary porcelain, you can't hike the price with new inventions. You can't increase processor speed or add another razor blade. In the 70s, they tried to add color. There was an option of avocado. In the 80s it turned into peach. There was fashion in the bathroom. There was a touch of sophistication with avocado in the 70s and a touch of decadence with peach in the 80s. But in the 90s, people just laughed at sanitary porcelain in color. And sophisticated hotels had to replace their sophisticated sanitary porcelain so they could stay sophisticated. In the 90s, people wanted sanitary porcelain white again, to check that it was clean after the sophistication of the 70s and the decades of the 80s. And the bathroom in a house from the 70s or the 80s was like a zone for time travel. I have a Danish friend who's into Buddhism. She's also allergic to oranges. One afternoon in a cafe, my friend suddenly said that she was in love with me. This came completely unexpected, and I didn't know what to say. So I said I had to think about it, which isn't the most elegant thing to say in such a situation. And I thought about it. First I was angry because I felt now she was destroying our friendship. And then I got sad because this was a friendship I really cared about. But then I thought again, and I thought, if I'm getting so upset about this, maybe I'm already in love with her. And the more I tried to think of how I felt, the more I realized that there could be no better person in this world I could be in love with. So I called her and asked to meet. But she was going to India early next morning. And she was a bit stressed getting ready for the trip. So she said it would be better to meet when she got back in 3 weeks. This made me a bit restless. But I felt bad and ashamed for having been so slow to react to her declaration of love. So I just wished her a good trip. And the 3 weeks went by, and I was nervous and restless. But then she called. And we met at the same cafe. And I asked about the trip. Now this was around the time of the death of Steve Jobs, the man behind Apple. And in the Heathrow bookstore, she bought the Steve Jobs book to have some lightweight reading for the flight. And she read the book about Steve Jobs on the flight to Delhi. And she read it in the taxi to the hotel, and she didn't leave the hotel until she'd finished reading the book about Steve Jobs. And during her 3 weeks in India, she was thinking of Steve Jobs the whole time. And she suddenly realized that she was in love with Steve Jobs. Then on her way back at Delhi's Indira Gandhi airport, she went to the bookstore to get some lightweight reading for the flight, because she was finished with Steve Jobs' book. And in the bookstore, she picked up a book by Bill Gates. Not because she wanted to buy it, it was just a way to size up the competition, because she was in love with Steve Jobs. But then, with a Bill Gates book in her hand, she heard a voice. And it was the voice of Bill Gates. And she turned around, and it was Bill Gates. And Bill asked her if she wanted to have the book autographed. But my friend had no intention of buying this book. She had just picked it up to sign up the competition because she was in love with Steve Jobs. But she didn't want to hurt Bill's feelings. So she said that she would love to have the book autographed. So they went to the pay desk, and she felt a bit silly, but Bill paid and autographed the book and gave it to her. And my friend said, "Thank you." But there had been a slight hesitation. And Bill found that hesitation quite cute. So Bill asked, "What are you doing now?" And my friend said that she was thinking of going to the tax-free store. So they went to the tax-free store. And in the tax-free store, Bill bought my friend Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate. Actually, I tried to find Toblerone so I could demonstrate, and it seems like Toblerone is not popular here. I found these chocobananen, not because they're like Toblerone in any way, but because I had seen them this morning in the Spar shop buying coffee. There were Spar branded chocobananen, and I saw these different kinds of chocobananen in the Aldi, and they're of the brand Bella, and I think here it says Qualität aus Österreich. But everyone knows, of course, that the real proper chocobananen comes from Manner, from Österreich. But it seems like it's a big hit, the chocobananen here in Hungary. I said, right, I'm not sure I've seen them in Vienna. He bought her Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate, Swiss. And then Bill asked her where she was going. And my friend said that she was going to Heathrow. And Bill said that he was going to Heathrow too. But first he had to go to the bathroom. And Bill said that he'd see her at the gate. Now at the gate, my friend was impressed by the self-effacing charm of the autographing Bill Gates. And it took some time for Bill to show up. And she started to feel nervous and restless. And she suddenly realized that by buying her Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate, Bill Gates had made her fall in love with him. Because her mother and father never bought her Toblerone, although they went on holiday with a car every summer and sailed on car ferries with tax-free stores, and in the tax-free store, my friend had always wanted Toblerone, but her mother and father never let her have it. Now, after having bought my friend the Toblerone she so badly needed, Bill had not been to the bathroom. Bill had been on the phone. Because Bill had not been going to Heathrow, but now he was. And he booked 2 tickets for first class. And at the gate, Bill asked my friend if she wanted to join him in first class. And thus, my friend got to sit in first class between Indira Gandhi Airport and Heathrow Airport, beside the second richest person in the world. And at Heathrow, they went to the airport hotel. And at the airport hotel, they got a room. And in the room, they concluded physically that which they had started spiritually. And that to me was the only satisfying part of the story, because I've always wondered why there are hotels at airports. Because if you go to an airport, surely it's because you want to fly somewhere. And if you fly somewhere, surely it's not because you want to stay in a hotel at an airport. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant defined marriage as a contract for the mutual use of the sexual organs. Now, to some people, such a Kantian contract, breaking such a Kantian contract, isn't a very big deal. It's just a confused thing that can happen at the office Christmas party, especially if there's a lot of snow. But to others, it is, because they take the expression of love through sex as seriously as I took the drinking of Coca-Cola when I grew up among the grey concrete blocks of the Swedish social democratic welfare state. Now, between me and that woman who went to India, there was clearly no such contract. But even if there was, should I really be upset if she's sleeping with Bill Gates? Does it really count as breaking a contract for the mutual use of the sexual organs if you're having sex with a person without a body? Without a body. Now, when I'm talking about not having a body, you might wonder what I mean. I don't mean artificial intelligence. I don't mean HAL in 2001. I mean people who have bodies but who don't want to acknowledge it. If you've ever shaken hands with such a person, you know exactly what I mean. For some reason, such people are often English or American. I don't know why this is. Maybe it's the language. An English or American philosopher would never define marriage as a contract for the mutual use of the sexual organs. And an English or American philosopher would never be called cunt, because in English cunt means vagina. And the Americans never piss or shit, they go to the bathroom. And if going to the bathroom seems too risque, they go to the washroom. And if going to the washroom still seems just too naughty, they go to the restroom to have a rest. And they can't make proper chocolate, so they buy European chocolate, but they can't enjoy it because they don't have bodies. But I'm not trying to say that not having a body necessarily is a bad thing, because isn't it exactly through not having a body Bill Gates got the drive to become the second richest person in the world? Just like Carlos Slim became the richest person in the world through being left-handed. Watch the watch. On the right-hand side of the room. Or Barack Obama became the President of the United States through being left-handed. As you see, Obama is signing documents, presidential documents, with his left hand, while he's also wearing his watch on his left hand. Maybe he doesn't want people to find out that he's left-handed. I felt I sort of was about to burp. My mother and father met in Mallorca, the Spanish holiday island, in the 60s, when Spain was ruled by fascist dictator General Franco. And for both of them, it was the first time they'd been flying. My Dutch mother had 7 sisters and 7 brothers. Her mother and father were Catholic. My Swedish father had 1 brother. His mother was a Protestant, and his father was a socialist. When I grew up among the grey concrete blocks of the Swedish welfare state, there was a tale that if you take a tooth and put it in a glass of Coca-Cola at night, the tooth will be gone in the morning. But that didn't keep me from drinking Coca-Cola. When I drank Coca-Cola, I drank a part of America. And with Coca-Cola in my body, I I'm trying to learn to do gestures. People say gestures liven up a performance. With Coca-Cola in my body, I became a part. It's like I just forget what I'm going to say. That's it. I became a part. With Coca-Cola in my body, I became a part of America. When Apple Computer started making computers, the big enemy, the big digital patriarch was IBM, International Business Machines. But today Apple is not only bigger than IBM, Apple is the biggest company in the world. But why has no company managed to do to Coca-Cola what Apple did to IBM? Coca-Cola, the big sweet patriarch. Surely it's easier to make a cola, it's easier to make a cola than to make a computer. In the 80s, Pepsi hired Michael Jackson and Madonna to be the choice of a new generation. But Michael lost it, and Madonna got together with Warren Beatty, who was in his 50s already in the 80s. And maybe Pepsi just sounds too much like a toothpaste. The genius of Coca-Cola is that it just is what it is. Coca-Cola doesn't make you think of brushing your teeth. It just makes you think of Coca-Cola. But what Coca-Cola is something made of coca leaves and cola nuts. That's where the name comes from. Coca leaves, cola nuts. Now, coca is the raw material for cocaine. And the United States has not only a war on terror, but also a war on drugs. Started by Richard Nixon. So while the United States sends planes to South America to spray and kill coca, Coca-Cola is buying it. But what happens to the coca that gets sprayed and poisoned, but not enough poisoned to die? Do we end up drinking it? Is this why there's no organic Coke? Today, there's no cocaine in Coca-Cola. And according to Coca-Cola, there hasn't been any cocaine in Coca-Cola since 1904. So Coca-Cola is buying coca from South America to put in the Coke, but first they take the cocaine out. But what happens to the cocaine? Do they send it back? Do they flush it out? Or do they hide it and save it for the office Christmas party? In 1863, Angelo Mariani invented the Mariani. A French wine with cocaine. The Mariani became a phenomenal success. With the Industrial Revolution and the invention of the railway, everything was going faster and faster, and people needed something to steady their nerves. In the 1960s, another era of great change. Lenny Bruce, the American comedian, steadied his nerves with heroin, of which he said, "I'll die young, but it's like kissing God." And 100 years earlier, the French painter Luc Olivier Masson keep that in mind. Luc Olivier Masson made this tribute to their Mariani. The Mariani bottle in a wreath of coca leaves, greeted by an angel with the words, "Ave Mariani, Hail Mariani." Now, Masson was a very versatile artist. He designed stamps and banknotes for the French government. He painted the awakening of spring, and he painted the Annunciation, which his Mariani endorsement clearly refers to. This is even more evident if one looks at Botticelli's version of the same thing. Now, in the Annunciation, Angel Gabriel comes to Virgin Mary. And Angel Gabriel says to Virgin Mary that she'll get pregnant. And she'll give birth to a son. And she'll call him Jesus. But Virgin Mary wonders how she can get pregnant when she's a virgin. And Angel Gabriel answers, the Holy Ghost shall come upon thee. Which means that Virgin Mary will have sex with a spiritual entity without a body. And to show that having sex with a spiritual entity without a body in no way is a threat to the virginity of Virgin Mary, Angel Gabriel holds a white lily. But for a bottle to be a virgin would be absurd. So to hold a white lily in front of a bottle wouldn't make any sense. Instead, this angel is holding a palm branch, which in ancient Israel was a symbol of victory. And in the New Testament, the palm branch symbolizes Jesus' victory over death. The biggest enemy of them all. He wins eternal life for all of us, they say. And according to the advertising, Hermione could almost give you eternal life. Hermione is fountain of youth, gives life and vigor. I should do it like this. Hermione, exquisite in taste, is health, elixir of life. Hermione prolongs life, it's wonderful. Honor to Hermione, it restored my health. Hermione made a new man of me. Hermione brightens our faculties, it's precious. This man was so famous, they could only use his last name, Frederick Bartholdi. He was the designer of the Statue of Liberty in New York. Fired up by Hermione. Hermione is perfect. It drives away the blues. Hermione could lead to reform my constitution. You should offer some to the French government. And in Rome, Pope Leo XIII got so enthusiastic about Hermione that he gave it his gold medal. In the United States, in the late 1800s, there were many wounded soldiers from the Civil War addicted to morphine. One of them was John Pemberton in Atlanta. But Pemberton had an idea that morphine addiction could be cured with cocaine. And inspired by the phenomenal success of Hermione, he launched Pemberton's French wine coca. But in 1886, wine became illegal in Atlanta when Atlanta introduced prohibition. So Pemberton had to remove the wine from his French wine coca. But instead, he put in water with bubbles. And just like all life comes from water, this was the birth of Coca-Cola. 2 years later, Pemberton died, still addicted to morphine. In 1943, Jean-Paul Sartre published Being a Nothingness. In Being a Nothingness, Sartre thoroughly tries to analyze the human condition. His conclusion is that we can never be completely happy. So like Hungary has, has the world record for suicides, used to. So I mean, it's like you're on the right direction. We can never be completely happy. If we think we are, we're lying to ourselves. It's false consciousness, because the existential void is always lurking around the corner. Now, does Jean-Paul Sartre look like someone who's right in between having a body and not having a body? And doesn't it take exactly such a person to write a philosophical work like Being a Nothingness? At the same time, during the Second World War, Coca-Cola promised Coke to every American soldier, wherever he happened to be. To keep it, they built 64 new factories all over the world. And their answer to being a nothingness was the real thing. And Coca-Cola conquered the world as the real thing. But they did it in a fake body. The designers of the Coca-Cola bottle wanted a bottle that reflected its ingredients. So they went to the local library to read about the coca leaf and the cola nut in the Encyclopedia Britannica. But they didn't get any inspiration. But one of them happened to turn a few pages from coca to cocoa, the raw material for chocolate, and found an illustration of the cocoa pod. And this became the model for the bottle. Although there's no cocoa in Coca-Cola whatsoever. First, the cocoa shape was adopted quite literally. But such a bottle with its midriff wider than its bottom could easily fall, making production inefficient. So they made it a bit thinner. So Coca-Cola, there's been a lot of flexibility because there's almost nothing left from where they started. There's no wine, there's no cocaine, and the bottle is more or less a complete lie. And flexibility is something Americans are very good at. Much better than the French, because where is their money today? Nowhere. But now the Chinese are taking over. Because the Chinese are even more flexible. And European and American companies get their products produced by flexible Chinese workers. And Europeans and Americans get worried about losing their jobs. But their politicians tell them not to worry, because they will be a part of the knowledge economy. Brainstorming and researching, combining art and science into ideas for new products which will be produced by flexible Chinese workers. But there's a surprise. Because it turns out that the Chinese are so flexible that they can get ideas all by themselves. When something is made of something, usually you know it by the name. If there are apples in apple pie, you know it by the name. And If there are oranges in orange juice, you know it by the name. Even with Coca-Cola, you know what's in it by the name. So why is chocolate called chocolate when it's made of cocoa? When the Spanish colonized South America, the original use of cocoa was as a thick brown drink used in Aztec religious rituals. And in Catholic Spain, drinking cocoa got very popular, because if you're Catholic and you're fasting, a drink doesn't count as breaking the fast, even when it's thick and brown, and there are a lot of calories in it. But there was a little problem with the name of this drink. The Aztecs called it cacahuatl, cocoa water, cacahuatl. But in Spanish the word caca means excrement, and the Spanish didn't like the idea of drinking a thick brown drink that had caca in it. So they took the Aztec word for water, wattle, and combined it with the Mayan word for cocoa, chocolate, and thus the word chocolate was born in good taste. My mother comes from a big Dutch Catholic family where there is a long tradition for drinking cocoa. And when I grew up, my mother made my cocoa the way her mother had made her cocoa, without milk, just with water. This is impossible to imagine today. Niente. And it's slightly mind-blowing to think that when I grew up, I was much closer to the ancient Aztec ritualistic way of drinking cocoa than I was to today's firmly established notion of how one should drink cocoa. Now, if we would ask my mother about this, she would say, it's not true. It didn't happen. But it did. Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe in the same God. And they all believe that God created this world. But Jews and Muslims think that God got one thing wrong, the pig. And actually, food experts today say that pig meat isn't very healthy. Supposedly, you use more energy digesting it than you get out of it. It's like filling your car with the wrong kind of petrol and it suddenly drives backwards. Or like connecting your computer to the wrong socket and hours of work are suddenly gone. But if pig meat is bad and cow meat is okay, why don't we just eat the cows and get milk from the pigs? The ideal place in the world for milk production based on pigs is Switzerland. The Swiss are excellent engineers. The Swiss could do a great job designing a milking machine for pigs. And pigs are much better than cows at climbing mountains. And Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate, is leading the way with its dancing milk pig in front of the matterhorn. Now I know what you think. You think it's Photoshop. It's not Photoshop. That's why I wanted to buy a real packet of Toblerone, but I could only get Choco Banana. Can you get Toblerone in Hungary? Yeah. Okay, so, but you can, I mean, you can look it up on your iPhones. This is authentic. It's just bigger. In the 1960s, I didn't like the taste of this. This had a much fresher taste. It's been in a basement or something. Do you know what I mean? This is sort of like it's been the same place for so long. You know, I mean for too long. It's a bit sweet. When a relationship ends, you call it a breakup. Or you say, the marriage went to pieces. The image is that of broken porcelain. And when there still is a relationship, but there's conflict, there are flying saucers and cups and plates in the air heading for a surefire crash. And the use of porcelain is highly symbolic because when you're in a relationship, for some reason it's very important to eat together. And the Last Supper is the most intimate moment in the history of the Christian church because Jesus never had sex with the disciples. And the Holy Grail remains a magical, mysterious thing that never was found, not even by Harrison Ford. Now, if the Holy Grail had been a mug made of porcelain, no one would have bothered looking for it because everyone would have presumed it had gone to pieces. Because porcelain can break. But it's very hygienic and quite cheap to make. And that's why it's the ideal material to eat and drink on. And for the same reasons, it's the ideal material for making toilets. Some companies even make both kinds of porcelain. But they always keep the catalogues separate. In the 1960s, the Fluxus artist George McCunis invented the monomeal, which consisted of many different dishes prepared from just one ingredient. In the 60s, this was an avant-garde, neo-Dadaistic way to eat. Today, this could be used to market Turkish Airlines. Turkish Airlines could serve turkey-only meals. And they could have a turkey on their logo and a turkey on their planes. But the Turkish management of Turkish Airlines would never allow this to happen. Because in Turkish, a turkey is called a hindi. And in Hindi, a turkey is called a Peru. This is true. So to chase that word around, one has to do a lot of flying. The early English colonizers of the United States, the early English Puritan colonizers of the United States, when they came to the United States, they'd never seen a turkey before. And when they saw a turkey, for some reason, they thought it came from Turkey. And that's why a turkey is called a turkey. But the turkey is not from Turkey, and it's not from India, and it's not even from Peru or any other South American country. The turkey is from the United States. And the United States of America is what Turkey should be called. If the Turkey absolutely needs to have, if it absolutely must have a geographical name. In English, porcelain is also called china. But why call porcelain china when there already is a word for it? When Marco Polo brought porcelain to Venice, Marco Polo, in a Cossack costume, which was fashionable at the time. When Marco Polo brought porcelain to Venice in 1295, the Chinese had already been making it for 1500 years, and it took like 450 years more until the Europeans managed to figure out how to do it. Now, to Marco, the shininess of porcelain reminded him of the cowrie shell. So, when he tried to figure out what to call this shiny Chinese thing, the Italian word for cowrie shell, porcellana, became the word for porcelain as well. But even before porcellana was the word for cowrie shell, porcellana was the word for a very small sow, a very small female pig, a very small milk pig. From porcella, sorry about the mistake, from porca. But why was a shiny shell, and it, like, you noted that the longer the word is, the smaller the animal. That's called diminutive in linguistics. But why was a shiny shell called a very small sow? Because in Marco Polo's time, porcellana, a very small sow, was slang for vagina. And the English and the Americans prefer to eat on china than on a vagina. Not even religious people should be ashamed talking about the sexual organs, because the sexual organs were created by God on Adam and Eve. But if one starts to think of Adam and Eve and the snake, isn't it strange that there's no religion against apples? If there was a religion against apples, a company wouldn't call itself Apple unless they only wanted to sell to a small niche market of Satanists. Steve Jobs, the man behind Apple, was a Buddhist. A lot of people think that if you die as a Buddhist, the worst that can happen is that you're reborn as a worm, eating meat from dead animals, maybe even meat from animals that are alive. But actually Buddhism has a hell. Actually Buddhism has 16 different hells, 8 hot ones and 8 cold ones. But you don't go there to be punished, you go there to be purified. And it's from a limited period of time. The longest time you have to spend in a Buddhist hell is 3 quintillion years. 3 quintillion years. That's a 3 and 18 zeros. So that's the worst that can happen, Steve Jobs. But of course we don't know what happens after that. Maybe then Steve is reborn as a worm. And Steve gets insanely and greatly upset. I can't eat meat. I'm a Buddhist. Silence. Can't we make a deal? How about fish? Silence. This is the problem with Buddhism. There's no one to complain to. There's no one to argue with. There's no God. You're alone. If Steve Jobs had been here tonight, there's one thing I would have liked to ask him. How do you decide to call a company that makes computers, phones, pods and pads by the name of a fruit? These machines can do many things, but you can't eat them. Other computer companies are called by what they make, like IBM, International Business Machines, or by who they are, like Hewlett-Packard, or by what they would like to be, like Oracle. But Apple doesn't make computers. Apple doesn't make apples. Apple makes computers. Apple doesn't make apples. Apple isn't an apple. And presumably Apple doesn't want to become an apple. So how about instead calling Apple by the name of the man behind it? How about calling Apple Jobs? But that wouldn't work, because in English, in England, the word job is slang for a piece of excrement. In England, if you eat enough apples, you get a job. And if you eat more, you can get more jobs. But you don't just get them. To sit on a toilet seat to produce these things does require some effort. So in that sense, the word job is quite a suitable word. In French, it could be une œuvre de merde, a work of shit. And that would be a very suitable expression in French, because the French have these toilets with a platform inside, where things lie like on a stage. So the French can inspect what they've done. And they do. And why shouldn't they? Face it, it's a part of us. And by knowing their jobs, the French get to know themselves. Or is it the other way around? That we get rid of our jobs because we don't really feel like a part of them. And the French inspect their kaka in order to know themselves by knowing what they're not. Is this the famous différence? Or maybe the truth is somewhere in between, both at the same time. Isn't in fact the truest thing we can say about ourselves that we're shit, but not completely? In 1982, I was thinking of this man, because I would say Friedrich Nietzsche. And I was thinking, should I say the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, or should I just say Friedrich Nietzsche? Like with Jean-Paul Sartre, you don't say the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, you say Jean-Paul Sartre. With Kant, I'd say German philosopher. With Nietzsche, I couldn't, and then I sort of jumped up to 1982 instead. In 1882, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche got a typewriter. The writing ball, skrivekulen, invented by a Danish priest. And on this typewriter, Nietzsche wrote, "Our writing instruments are working on our thoughts." But we don't know if Nietzsche meant that the typewriter made him think more of typewriters, or if he was thinking of a different kind of thinking on a more fundamental level. And if he did, one has to wonder how this typewriter, invented by a Danish priest, was constructed. Because later that year, Nietzsche wrote that God is dead. 99 years later, IBM, International Business Machines, the big digital patriarch, launched the personal computer, the PC. IBM wanted to make it friendly, so they wanted to hire Charlie Chaplin as a spokesperson. But there was a problem. Charlie Chaplin was left-wing. And there was another problem. Charlie Chaplin was dead. Chaplin had been dead for 4 years. But that problem could be solved. IBM bought the rights to use Chaplin and hire an actor. and since Chaplin was dead, his being left-wing wasn't that bad. The slogan for the IBM Chaplin campaign was, "The IBM personal computer, a tool for modern times." So there was a reference to Modern Times, Chaplin's famous film from 1936. But how can Modern Times from 1936 still be Modern Times in 1981? And how can a film about exploited workers in a mechanized society end up in a slogan, "selling business machines"? This is worth thinking of if you're planning to become famous. Do you really want to make advertising when you're dead? In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh, a computer with a graphic user interface, which meant that normal people could actually use it. 1 year later, 1985, Microsoft launched a graphic user interface for the PC. And Bill Gates, the head of Microsoft, decided to call it Windows. But calling Windows Windows was a bad idea. Through a window, you can look into your computer, but to really get in there, don't you want a door or a gate? So how about calling Windows Gates? That would be promise of full access. But maybe Bill is too shy to call Windows Gates. Because what do we really know about Bill Gates? What do we really know about Bill Gates and how he feels about himself and his name? Face it, most people who work ridiculously hard do it because they hate themselves. Or maybe Bill just doesn't like puns. Words that sound the same but mean completely different things. Maybe Bill feels bullied at airports when people say that's gate 28, Mr. Gates. But if Bill doesn't like puns, why does he give the name Word to a computer program when the word word already is a word for a word? At least it should be called words, unless Bill wants us to believe it's for very short texts. And does Microsoft sound like something you put into a washing machine? I think the idea to call Windows Gates is brilliant. But maybe Bill just hasn't thought about it. But if Bill has thought about it and he still doesn't like it, Bill could call Windows Doors. And there could be a slogan, Microsoft Doors. Don't just look, break on through to the other side. And if Bill wants to be even wilder, Microsoft could make an application for sex chat. And they could call the application for sex chat Microsoft Dirty Word. And they could start a chain for sadomasochistic studios and call it Microsoft Sex Cell. And since Microsoft already is making an Xbox, they could make a sex box. A machine for oral sex. And call it Microsoft Head Office. And as an erotic entertainment entrepreneur, Bill Gates could still use the old Microsoft slogan, "Your potential, our passion." But Microsoft doesn't quite sound like the name of a company doing erotic entertainment. So as an erotic entertainment entrepreneur, maybe Bill should think of changing the name of Microsoft. To Mega Hard. Or maybe even Giga Hard. over at Apple, in Cupertino, California, Steve Jobs was completely convinced that Apple was making insanely great stuff. But that wasn't enough. Apple needed to learn to sell to the masses. Steve wanted an expert on marketing, and in the early 80s, before Michael Jackson lost it and Madonna got together with Warren Beatty, the most impressive marketing was done by Pepsi. So Steve went to the head of Pepsi, John Scully, the inventor of the Pepsi Challenge. And Steve said to John, "John, my name is Steve Jobs. I'm from a computer company in Cupertino, California. It's called Apple. We're taking on IBM, we're taking on the big digital patriarch. We're taking them on, John, and I want you to lead us. John, do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" And John Scully liked the idea of changing the world, so he came over to Apple and took command of the mouse. Now, the first thing Scully did at Apple was to raise the price of the Mac with 25%, by 25%, $500, to get more money for marketing, because marketing was his thing. Then he got Steve to quit, because Steve tried to get him to quit. And then he wrote a book about all the great things he'd done at Pepsi and all the great stuff he was making at Apple, doing at Apple. And he called it Odyssey. And all the workers at Apple got a copy of the book to inspire excellence. And then he got fired because people thought the Mac was too expensive. He thought the Mac was too expensive, so they bought PCs instead. And eventually Steve came back to Apple. But by now, Apple was almost bankrupt. This was in 1997. And Bill Gates was kind enough to save Apple by investing in Apple. But when Steve announced this, and Bill's face got on the screen for a live transmission, the audience of Apple nerds booed at Bill. That was their thanks to Bill Gates for saving Apple. But Steve said, "Bill, thank you, the world's a better place." By which he meant that thanks to Bill's bills, Jobs could keep his job. Apple's address in Cupertino, California is one infinite loop. Infinite loop is a greeting to the Apple nerds, because infinite loop is a programming term. But there's a problem with Apple's infinite loop in Cupertino, California, because it's not infinite. Because it's not even a loop. Because before it comes back to itself, like a snake would bite its tail, it's cut off by Mariani Ave. Which doesn't mean Ave Mariani, but Mariani Avenue. Infinite loop, infinite loop, infinite loop, Mariani Ave. You can check it on your iPhone. Prunes can cure constipation. And apricots and prunes would be a much better name for Apple than Apple, because it's too hot to grow apples in Cupertino, California. This is the first Apple logo with Isaac Newton waiting for an apple to fall on his head. It wasn't used for very long. This is the second Apple logo, but it wasn't until Apple got rid of that gay flag Apple got really big. But how about the bite? Where does the bite come from? It might come from Alan Turing. Alan Turing was a genius and the father of modern computer science. It was through the work of Alan Turing that the British managed to crack the German Enigma code during the Second World War. And according to Churchill, that was how they won the war. But that didn't keep the British from prosecuting Alan Turing for being gay. In 1952, with a law from 1885, the same law that had been used against Oscar Wilde. And Alan Turing was sentenced to chemical castration. So Alan Turing killed himself by biting into an apple poisoned with cyanide. Today, the Turing Award is the highest award for computer science. It's like the Nobel Prize for computing. In Sweden, we say Nobel, but the English say Nobel Prize. Nobel. It should be Nobel. It's like the Nobel Prize for computing. But Apple say that nothing about their name or logo has anything to do with Alan Turing. So who was it then that bit into the apple? Maybe it was Snow White. But that would give Apple trouble with the Disney people. So the only remaining possibility is Adam and Eve. So that would be a much better name for Apple, Adam and Eve. And it could be sort of a bit more progressive by calling it Eve and Adam. And if there was a Garden of Eden today, the tree of knowledge would be an iPad. And God would say, you can touch any tablet device. You can touch the Samsung or the Sanyo or the Sony, but don't touch the Apple. The iPad is mine. When I grew up among the grey concrete blocks of the Swedish welfare state, we didn't have the word orange. The color was called brandgul, fire yellow, because orange wasn't yet a color of its own. The fruit was called apelsin, and it still is. Apelsin and apelsin corresponds to chin in China, because apelsin means Chinese apple. So if Adam and Eve had been Chinese, they could have eaten an apple. But first, they had to peel it. And during the peeling, they could have changed their minds not to eat forbidden fruit, and thus radically have changed the course of history. If there's a fruit called orange, there could as well be a fruit called red. But which fruit would such a red fruit be? There's no fruit that's iconologically red, like an orange is orange, or a banana is yellow, unless it's a blood orange that's red on the inside, just like an avocado is avocado on the inside, or like Coca-Cola is the color Coca-Cola. Although the can is red, and it would make sense to call a blood orange red. because there's no blood in a blood orange. If there was blood in a blood orange, it wouldn't have been red. It would have been purple, like a blood sausage, which the English, with their lack of bodies, call black pudding. This is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is the third richest person in the world, after Carl Slim and Bill Gates. And his company, Berkshire Hathaway, is number 8. Berkshire Hathaway used to make textiles, now they make nothing. They're just owning other companies. And Buffett chooses which companies to buy and how much, like one gets food and drink from a buffet. One of the companies Buffett has chosen is Coca-Cola. And so he's here with two cans of Cherry Coke and a Neumann KMS 105 microphone. It sounds like this, if you're curious. Another company Buffett has chosen from the buffet, and this is true, is Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate. And the second biggest owner of Berkshire Hathaway is Bill Gates. That means that Bill is the owner, among a lot of other things, of 750 million cans of Coca-Cola and 100 million packets of Toblerone of the 100 gram size. But there's something fishy about Bill hooking up with Buffett. And as I said, no, I didn't say. Okay, did I say? Did I? No, I didn't say. I forgot to say. Okay, Bill has $20 billion. 20 billion. Bill has $20 billion in Berkshire Hathaway. As the second biggest owner. But he's only got $14 billion in Microsoft. Because for some reason, Bill only finds it worth owning 13% of Microsoft. So Bill is believing in the Buffett Buffet company with $6 billion more than in Microsoft. Are you with me? Any questions? I'm happy you're with me. But if Bill only finds it worth owning 13% of Microsoft, why doesn't he go with Berkshire Hathaway all the way? And how about combining that mission with doing something about not having a body? When I was in the Swedish Army during the Cold War, I was a combat medic. And when we practiced operating gunshot wounds, we practiced on pigs. Because there's a striking similarity between the body of a pig and the body of a human. Now, to operate the body of a pig into a human is probably still beyond of what today's medical science can accomplish. But the other way around is much easier. And Switzerland has the best plastic surgeons in the world. So the next time Bill Gates goes to Switzerland to attend the World Economic Forum in Davos, Bill can send a double to Davos And Bill's double doesn't have to do or say very much, apart from wearing Bill's glasses and a faint smile and nod once in a while, and look like he doesn't have a body. In the meantime, Bill goes to clinic for plastic surgery, the world's best clinic for plastic surgery, the one in Zurich by the lake. Because Bill has decided to throw his full weight behind one of the Berkshire Hathaway companies, Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate. And in the clinic for plastic surgery in Zurich by the lake, Bill goes through a major operation to become a pig. And when Bill has become a pig, Bill goes through another operation to become a sow, a female pig, because it's only female pigs that can produce milk. And Bill will eat the green grass of the Swiss valleys. And every evening Bill will return to the stables, which are kept immaculately clean, in the way only the Swiss can keep things immaculately clean. And at the stables Bill delivers milk. And Bill's milk is picked up by an environmentally friendly electric tank truck and is driven to the Toblerone factory, where Bill's milk is mixed with the milk from all the other Swiss milk pigs to become Toblerone, the Swiss triangular milk chocolate. And the only difference between Bill and the other milk pigs is that Bill is a pig with a passport, and that Bill is an American pig, and that Bill is the richest pig in the world. Now, if Bill Gates, the pig, and Steve Jobs, the worm, would meet, would they be able to speak to each other? Or would there be an interface problem? And if Bill Gates, the pig, can't understand what Steve Jobs, the worm, is saying, how will Bill know that this is a former computer company executive from Cupertino, California? So Steve might end up as a part of Bill's diet without there really being any evil intent intended. And even if Bill will know, Steve might still end up as a part of Bill's diet. Because if you're eating grass all day long and you suddenly see a worm, don't you want to take advantage of that opportunity? And then some of Steve's molecules will end up, which suddenly makes you see the sense of being a vegan. And those of Steve's molecules that don't make it to the Toblerone will end up in Bill Gates' excrement. And if Bill Gates has the tiniest fragment of a sense of humor, Bill Gates will call those jobs Steve Jobs. The other day, my Danish friend called and asked to meet again. So we meet again at the same cafe. And I get there a little bit late. And my friend is sitting there with a coffee and a glass of orange juice. And my Danish friend says that in Denmark there's an orange juice called real juice, rigtig juice, and she can drink it, although she's allergic to oranges. But I'm eager to know how it's going with Bill Gates. And my friend says, Bill Gates is a fucking pig. I haven't heard from him for ages, and he doesn't even answer when I call. But I say, don't be so hard on Bill. It's probably just an interface problem. If Bill Gates really is a pig, the buttons of his phone will be too small. We just need to wait for technology to catch up. Like an iPad extra large. And I think the most important thing today, whatever happens, is to accept change. And I think of the two tomatoes crossing a street. Where one of the tomatoes is run over by a car. And the other tomato says, come on, catch up. Let's go. And I think of Nietzsche and what Nietzsche would have said of an iPad extra large or any kind of digital screen device. Would Nietzsche have felt displaced by the displays? Or would Nietzsche have embraced the new technology? And if a typewriter invented by a Danish priest made Nietzsche think that God was dead, what kind of thoughts would Nietzsche have thought through a computer, phone, pod or pad, invented by a hippie Buddhist businessman in Cupertino, California? If Buddhism is about getting into nothing, why are Buddhist monks wearing orange dresses, looking like signal flags for something? Or like the Dutch football team in drag, without wigs? And if Buddhism is about getting into nothing, why is Dalai Lama wearing glasses which surely are designed for seeing material objects? And if Buddhism is about getting into nothing, why are people getting into Buddhism, taking trips to the east when they surely should be going nowhere? Finally, I would like to ask you to close your eyes and imagine that you're sitting by a computer running a piece of software called Driving the Blues Away. Now imagine that you would like to quit this piece of software. So you press the control key if you have a PC, or the command key if you have a Mac, while at the same time you press the key for the letter Q. And a new window appears. And the new window is asking you, are you really sure you want Driving the Blues Away to quit? Are you quite sure about this? So with your left or your right hand, you move a little arrow on the screen to an image of a button that says OK. And then, with your left or your right hand, you click on the OK. Thank you.